Now we're in for a really proper race, with some of the front runners starting a long way down the field, with Max Verstappen in 14th.
I still think he's a big threat in this Grand Prix. Max had a good start, was already up into 10th.
Look at Max! Max and Charles Leclerc battling side by side. Max Verstappen making up more ground, and I think he's taking 8th place on the opening lap. That just shows how well it's going for Max Verstappen.
It's an absurd pace.
The Dutch fans go crazy as Max Verstappen once again takes the lead of the Belgian Grand Prix.
I can't remember watching a race in the dry where one driver had so much more pace in hand than everyone else in the field, including his teammate.
It is Max Verstappen who takes victory at the Belgian Grand Prix, his 9th win of the season.
Amazing Sunday, guys. Can't miss a rocket ship all weekend, unbelievable.
His second hat-trick of victories in the 2022 season.
Well, what a dominant performance by Max Verstappen and Red Bull. I can't think of a more dominant race weekend from Max himself. Let's talk about it. I've got a very international cast once again to talk through it all. Former F1 driver Marc Surer is with me, and Michael Schmidt from Auto, Motor and Sport. Guys, it's brilliant to have you with us. Marc, can you think of a more dominant Max Verstappen performance in Formula One?
Not a more dominant Verstappen, but we've seen these kinds of dominance with Michael Schumacher, obviously at his best Ferrari times, with Sebastian Vettel in the second half of the season 2013, and also with Lewis Hamilton, of course, in one of these years when he seems to become every-time world champion.
Now, Marc, is it track specific, or do you think Red Bull can carry this level of performance forward for the rest of the season?
Well, after he won in Budapest, which is a track which the Red Bull doesn't perform very well, it's a bit worrying. But I think that car is very good on fast tracks. Max Verstappen was in a super form. It reminded me of the last year race in Sao Paulo with Lewis Hamilton, doing more or less the same, driving through the field as they don't exist.
Do you think everybody was caught out by Red Bull's pace here, specifically Ferrari?
Well, I think they could feel that already in qualifying or in the free practice. I think the car just fitted this track very well. I thought it may be because of the cold weather, but the hot weather today didn't help.
So what are they going to be doing back in Maranello, Michael? Slightly panicking ahead of Monza, I guess?
Yeah, I think Monza will be another tough one for Ferrari. I don't know whether they are panicking. I think they know probably pretty well why they were underperforming here or why Red Bull was overperforming. Maybe even the two reasons. For sure, this circuit helps Red Bull because it's a circuit which asks for efficiency, and Red Bull has shown on many circuits this year where you need efficiency that they're a little bit ahead of Ferrari. Here they had been a lot ahead of Ferrari, and I think that is the question Ferrari has to answer, why it was such a big gap.
I don't want to pour cold water on this, guys, but with the regulation stability that we've got until the end of 2025, does this put Red Bull in the pound seat until then? Are we talking seasons of dominance now? No,
I don't think so. I think these rules are very young. Apparently, there were two teams who understood it quite well right from the beginning. And now we have one race where Ferrari was really off the pace. So you have to assume that on other circuits, Ferrari will be closer. There's obviously one question mark. Is this TD which came here, which forced maybe the one or the other to set up the cars a little bit different, whether this has an influence? I think we only will find out after Zandvoort, Monza, and maybe even Singapore, when we have a string of races. If Red Bull is all the time that dominant, then we have to worry.
Well, Carlos Sainz was asked that very question in the press conference after the race, and he said no. His feeling was that the TD that's come into effect here has made no difference at all.
Well, I would say the same, but there's one special thing about Spa-Francorchamps, which is Eau Rouge, and as it turned out here, two other corners, you have to set your car higher. That has nothing to do with these ground effect cars. It was a case already in the past. And Andrew Chauvelin from Mercedes told me this morning is 5 to 6 millimeters. So it's not nothing, it's quite a lot. And some cars are happier in that range of ride height than others, that's for sure. And maybe the Red Bull, or I'm sure the Red Bull was very happy. And it was shown already in the first half of the season that high ride heights, Red Bull doesn't care too much, whereas others, they have their problems.
That's a really good point. Now, all this chat of porpoising, Mark, I mean, I'm guessing you know all about this from your Formula One career. I mean, the FIA have introduced the changes for safety reasons. What are your memories of porpoising?
Yeah, it always hurts one more than the other, and I was wondering, for example, why Mercedes performed so bad. Maybe it has something to do with that as well, because they were complaining about the cold tires, and now it was warm and they didn't go any faster. So maybe they're suffering more than the other teams.
We'll come on to Mercedes in a minute. I did just want to get your thoughts, Mark, on Max Verstappen and the way he's driving at the minute. Having won that World Championship last year, do you feel we're seeing a different man this season?
Definitely. If you watched the first lap, he was so careful. I mean, not the Max Verstappen from last year, which overtakes if there is only the space for half a car. No, he was really careful. He knows he has the best car and he's patient to wait. And he was patient as well in the last race in Hungary, when he was winning from 10th position. So it's a different Max we've seen this year.
So look, what about Ferrari's weekend? Okay, the performance wasn't there, we've established that, but there were still mistakes on the pit wall.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the last pit stop was unnecessary because they must have calculated that it will be very close for Charles Leclerc coming out in front of Alonso. And then everybody knew it takes half a lap until the tires are up to temperature, knowing Alonso that he would attack if he sees a chance. So the target to do the fastest lap was already ruined by Alonso overtaking Charles, even if Charles a lap later re-overtook him.
And let's face it, was he ever actually going to get fastest lap, even if it had been a clean lap?
I don't think so. I think it was 7 tenths or something like that missing to Max Verstappen's lap. I think it was a mission impossible.
Mark, the Ferrari pit wall?
I noticed today that they keep asking the driver. This is something new. Both drivers keep asking, what tires do you want? We are, like we are serving you. And yes, the mistake was to come in one lap to go for the soft tires. If you plan that, I mean, the soft tires are good enough for 3 fast laps. So you put him in 1 lap before. So to be safe, if Alonso overtake him, he has the chance to overtake him and still have a clear lap. So yeah, that was a big mistake again.
Why the questions to the drivers? Does it show a lack of harmony, a lack of faith?
I think what happened before, because especially in Hungary, when Leclerc said, why they give me the hard tires? I think now they decided to talk to the driver before they decide. But the mistakes are still there.
And what about Checo's performance this weekend? I was surprised by the gap, because he's always been pretty good here.
Yeah, but you have to. You can see since quite a while that the gap between Max Verstappen and Perez becomes the same like it was in the past. The first 5 or 6 races it was different. Perez was much closer, but in the first 5 or 6 races the Red Bull was not yet suited to what Max likes. There was one problem: the car was too much understeering, and that helps Perez, but that screws a little bit Max Verstappen. And then step by step, the Red Bull became a real Red Bull again, where you have a loose rear end, but Max Verstappen doesn't care about it. He wants to have a car which turns in sharp, which reacts on each input on the steering wheel.
But I have to say, in the beginning of the season, I think we didn't see the maximum of Max. I think Max could not perform as good as he wanted to because the car didn't do what he wanted. Now he get the car doing what he wants, so he improved. I think Checo is still on the same level, but the Max improved a lot.
It's fascinating, isn't it, this to and fro and how you deal with your teammates. I mean, do you think Checo really understands now that he's a supporting role? He's 91 points behind Max in the World Championship, 8 races to go.
I remember this year, I mean, he's been asking why he has to let the other one go, and he was really thinking he has a chance. But now, with the form Max is in, he realized, I think, he is the number 2 and he will accept this role for sure.
Let's talk about Mercedes. We are in the paddock. We are outside their motorhome, looking at quite a loud sticker on the side of the motorhome, celebrating 55 years of AMG. Michael, for our listeners who don't know what AMG is, very quickly.
Well, it's a sporty department of Mercedes. So if you wanted to have a Mercedes, which you can buy from Mercedes, a little bit more horsepower, a stiffer suspension, then you went to AMG. I think that was the reason why they had been founded.
And special livery this weekend to celebrate that, but sadly they weren't celebrating an upturn in performance. And I, for one, after Hungary, thought, okay, game on. We've got 6 cars challenging for the win at Spa, and well, we only had one car actually, and that was Max. But were you surprised that Mercedes couldn't get it together this weekend?
To that extent, yes. I was not surprised that Red Bull was faster, and I also thought that Ferrari would be faster. We could see this pattern. Mercedes did progress and went a step back. Progress, a step back. Barcelona, they were good. The races after, a step back. Same with Silverstone and the races after Silverstone. Now we had Hungary, the race after Hungary. So it goes up and down. That shows that they still have not yet understood their car fully.
So we go to Zandvoort next weekend, and do you think there's a chance they could be competitive?
I think so, yes. It's a slower circuit, then obviously the temperatures plays a role, and that could play into their cards.
But Michael, the temperature plays a role, we thought, but as Marc touched on a little bit earlier, much hotter conditions here on race day, yet they were still slow.
They were slow versus Verstappen, but they were pretty close to Ferrari, which they weren't yesterday. I mean, yesterday was also a gap of 6 or 7 tenths to the best Ferrari.
So, George Russell, Mr. Consistent, brings it home, P4. Lewis Hamilton, Marc, got involved in, what should we call it, a fracas with Fernando Alonso on the opening lap. What was your take on what happened up at Les Combes?
It was completely unnecessary, because we've seen so many overtaking in this corner. If you watch the Formula 2 race, they kept overtaking on the outside, and it's so easy because after is a left hand, is like an S. So if you go on the outside, you leave the other one room, and because it's the left-hand corner coming, you win anyway. So why Lewis pulled in and squeezed Alonso onto the curb, I don't understand. I think he just misjudged it. I cannot understand why he did it.
He said in the pen during the race that Alonso was in his blind spot. But I mean, Lewis, this is not his first rodeo, is it?
No, but I think what I like with Lewis is that he's honest. He was honest when he had the collision with Albon in Brazil. I think he immediately said it was my fault, and again he said here it was my fault. Other drivers would have maybe looked for an excuse.
Totally agree with you on the honesty, but do you think it's something about Alonso that just brings out the red mist? And I don't know, just because you're right. I always think Lewis, his spatial awareness and car positioning is usually the best in the field. So for him to make that mistake makes me think, why? Is it because it's Alonso, the old adversary?
Well, I would say it was rather the moments before this overtaking, because Alonso was moving twice, or was changing twice the line, and first he went to the inside, then a little bit to the outside. So maybe Lewis was a bit too emotional and said to himself, I got to get this guy here.
Marc, what do you feel is going on inside Lewis Hamilton's head at the minute with regards car performance, his future? We're going to come on to the driver market in just a minute, but do you think he's still in love with this as much as he always was? Or at some point, is the lack of performance going to make him think about doing other things?
I don't think so. I think now after this season he cannot stop racing. He could have done last year, but now he cannot, because he has to show that he gets through that and start winning again, and then he can retire. But he will not give up in this situation, because now is a Russell which performs better most of the time, and he wants to go back winning and then on the podium say, okay, that's it, guys.
Very quickly, we have been interrupted by one of the stars of the show today, Alex Albon. What another brilliant race by you.
Thank you very much. I feel like I've been on this show a few times now.
I think we're your lucky mascot, really.
Yeah, speaking of good, it was a really good race, actually. It was, it feels good because it's the pressure of like just keeping everyone behind. It was a
lap after lap.
Yeah, and we didn't have the pace today. You know, we did in qualifying yesterday, but today was a different story. I could tell, or we could tell after a few laps that it was going to be a tricky race, because we are slippery. That's partly why we were good on Saturday, but also when you're quick on the straights, it tends to mean you slide around a bit more in the corners, and that's the low downforce for you. So the tyres were screaming lap after lap, and it was we call it squeaky bum time.
Do you know what? I thought You were brilliant throughout, but just right at the end there when Stroll came out of the pits, did you just get off the gas a little bit so that Latifi could then overtake him? I thought you're thinking of everything.
Well, not that. Basically what we were doing was, firstly I had to make sure Nicky had the slipstream coming out the pit exit so he could defend from Stroll. But then really the main trick was to set up the car for one corner. So we changed the front wing and basically put some downforce make the car sharper on the nose, basically so that we were good in one corner, because you only need to be good in turn one to keep someone behind. And it did hurt us a little bit for the rest of the lap, but because we got away with turn one being quick, that was all we needed. And I didn't expect there to be 10 cars behind, but yeah, we kept Lance back just purely from turn one. So yeah,
sensational, and I guess hopeful for Monza.
There we go. I mean, we're at Zandvoort next.
But you're hopeful for Zandvoort?
You have to be hopeful for everything. But I mean, Zandvoort we've got to look at first. But yes, you are right. And honestly, that's also where our head is at. You know, we might struggle a bit in Zandvoort, but on paper, you know, Monza should suit us. So yeah, let's see.
Brilliant job. Well done. He's good, isn't he?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, it was better in the cold temperature, I think. His car worked better in the last 2 days than today. But still, he did a fantastic job today, defending himself.
I think he could mould Williams into being his team. He's just re-signed. I think it was multi-year, wasn't it? You know, he's the main man there.
Absolutely. He's doing a fantastic season and giving probably Williams more than the car deserves, and he's using his chances. He had 3 chances, and all these 3 chances he turned into points. You have to say today, as you said, fantastic race. 5 people behind him for I don't know how many laps, and all over the place. But he kept it quiet, and he did a fantastic job. And I was told, for example, that Piastri, because Alpine wanted to park Piastri at Williams, and he didn't want to drive at Williams because he was a little bit afraid that the battle against Albon could turn out not so positive for him.
This episode of F1 Nation is sponsored by NordVPN. If you're looking for a way to add extra security to your internet connection when you're at home, or you want to ensure your privacy is protected when accessing public Wi-Fi, NordVPN can help you access the internet safely and securely, so you never need to worry about your personal data being shared. If you're anything like me, you probably find you often need to access public Wi-Fi to work, pay for items, or access your personal banking information while you're on the move. It's quick and convenient, and it's important to remember that the security in these spaces is never guaranteed. With NordVPN, internet traffic is routed through a secure encrypted tunnel which protects data and privacy. And you don't need to sacrifice your internet speed in the process. There are more than 5,500 servers based in 59 countries, so you can find a server near you for better speed. It's simple to use. All it takes to connect is one click, or you can enable Auto Connect, so you can rest assured that you're always protected. And if you find you've got multiple devices that you're using on a daily basis, don't worry, because with just one account, you can use NordVPN on up to 6 devices, and it's compatible with every major platform. So grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/F1Nation to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So let's look down the order. Fernando Alonso, P5, the old dog. He's got wind in his sails, hasn't he, with that new, probably quite lucrative deal at Aston Martin. Another great performance.
Yes, I expected even a little bit more.
You're a hard taskmaster, Mr. Surer.
The car was very good on the straight, and so I thought he can really fight against the Ferraris because of the top speed. But then in the end, I think it's a fantastic result. And Ocon came from the back, which was also quite impressive. So the Alpine was impressive, I would say. And Alonso, you can just trust him. He will do the job. When the car belongs to 4th position, he will finish 4th or finish 5th, whatever the car can do.
Yes, I have to say, I mean, again, this race showed how what his race skills are. When you look, he's fast when he needs to be fast, and he goes slow when he can afford to be slow. You could see in the last stint, I mean, he had a very long stint. I think he pitted in lap 25, if I'm right. So that was a very long stint compared to Vettel and to Ocon, who were in his back and who were really his rivals. And then, you know, he had the nerves to go a little bit slower to keep his tires alive. When Ocon was catching up, I think from 7 or 8 seconds down to 2.5 or 3, then all of a sudden he picked up pace again. So you have to have that, you know. That
he thinks of everything.
He thinks of everything, yeah.
Do you think that if Alonso was in a race-winning car, he could still win the World Championship?
Yeah, 100%. For me, he's still the best.
Still the best,
yeah.
On the grid?
On the grid.
Ahead of Verstappen?
Ahead of Verstappen, because he has he is good in all disciplines.
Mark?
That's a bit too much. It's better as Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton is not. But he is fighting, but I think he lost a bit of his poor speed, and this is just the age. But in the race, you don't feel it. But I think the age will eat on him.
Without the collision with Hamilton on lap 1, what could he have done today? I mean, he was P2 at the time.
Yeah, but I think he was not able to keep the Ferrari behind, as Leclerc was showing in the end. And obviously, I mean, the speed of the Ferrari was still much better than the one of the Alpine. And you could see whenever somebody caught up on Alonso, and he knew, I'm not going to win that fight, he let him pass without any defense, because he knew, I'm only screwing my tires if I start really fighting for it.
Let's talk about another multiple world champion who, in the story, the narrative of 2022, is quite heavily linked with Alonso. Sebastian Vettel's retiring, Alonso's replacing him, and I thought we saw a more racy Vettel today than we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, especially in the first lap. I mean, he
where
came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he was in the top 10. Yeah.
Starts P10,
yeah.
And then where was he at one point? Up to sort of challenging for P4 or
exactly,
something?
Yeah, something like that. It was unbelievable. But he knows that this Aston Martin is a very good race car, actually. It's just not good in qualifying. And for him, the first lap is really important to have a good race. Because once he's in the top 10, then he can fight for the positions. But when you start in P18, have a bad first lap, and you are still 18 or 17, then it's very difficult to move forward.
Michael, when you have a performance like that from Vettel, do you think there's any bit of him that's going, oh, I could do with more than 8 more races?
I think not now. We might feel that maybe in a year's time.
What do you think, Mark? I think he will get bored when he retires. It's very early to retire for him, and he is still, as we can see today, he is still hot, you know, he loves racing. But of course, I mean, he loves racing for positions. He would love to race for wins, and he knows this chance is not there anymore. So I think he's right to retire.
Now look, one other guy we haven't talked about in the top 10, Pierre Gasly. A tremendous race, actually, because he was at the back at one point. It's been a difficult year for AlphaTauri, hasn't it? Talk about fluctuations in form from Mercedes. Well, I think it's even more exaggerated with them.
Yeah, I think probably the task to build a car to completely new regulations was a step too far. I mean, before, the 2 seasons before, they kept building up on a car they knew. But now, you know, if you have complete new regulations, you can see experience paid off. I mean, Adrian Newey, obviously, in the end, his team, he and his team, they built the best car. And there's for sure also one reason, because Adrian knew these ground effect cars from 40 years ago, and he had an idea of purposing, which nobody had at the time. He didn't know, he told me once, he knows that this can happen, but he obviously didn't reckon that's that bad, talking about the beginning of the season. And I think a young team like AlphaTauri, they're just thrown into cold water, and then now they see how difficult it is.
Right, now, guys, explain one thing to me. Why were McLaren off the pace this weekend?
I think nobody knows that. This car seems to work on one track and doesn't work on the other track. But why? If I would know that, I would have a job at McLaren for sure.
I mean, you know, Norris quick over one lap again, but obviously the power unit penalties. I mean, God, the barrage of power unit penalties that came this weekend. But I thought Norris would fight through more effectively than he did.
Yeah, I thought so too, after seeing the lap times in practice and qualifying. But, you know, with McLaren, one thing is the car is not very efficient. That has been the whole year the case, which is not so good here in Spa, as we saw on other cars as well.
Just too draggy.
Yeah, too draggy. And the second thing is, when you look at the story of McLaren this year, whenever they brought a big upgrade, and here they had again a big upgrade, I think 8 points, they had modifications. The first race was always not very impressive. Then they started to learn about it, and then they were getting better.
So expect them to get stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's the race. So much else has gone on this weekend. Let's start by talking about the driver silly season. I can't keep up with it. But Daniel Ricciardo, I saw a very broken man on Thursday, and it's funny, isn't it? You see, Vettel's leaving at the end of the year, still so punchy in the race today. I thought Daniel looked very sad.
It is sad. I was a big fan of him. I think he did the best overtaking in Formula One in the last few years. He could overtake somebody even if he was 20 meters or 50 meters behind. He still could outbrake somebody and take the corner. It was unbelievable. And he lost that. So
Why? Why has he lost it?
I think he just had not the confidence in the car. And I think now the modern cars more and more tend to be pointy, to have a quick turn in. And maybe he cannot do what he did before because the car gets too nervous when he tried to do that. And I think he lost the confidence. I cannot explain it different.
And do you think the team could have done more to develop the car in his direction?
I think then you have to change the aerodynamics if you want to do that. That means you have to build the car for him and not just a setup. This is a basic now. And all the cars, all the fast cars have this tendency to turn in quick. A car who turns in quick, Max Verstappen proves it. If he turns in quick, you cannot beat him. And some other teams have exactly the same. This is now the new way to set up a car. And obviously the driving style of Ricciardo is not for that.
Do you think this news was a surprise to him, Michael?
No, I don't think so. I think they prepared him quite well. I mean, he felt that something is wrong, and then I believe what McLaren said, that since the last month they were telling him, listen, the painting is on the wall, and if you don't perform, we will separate.
I think McLaren can rest easy that they've done everything that they can, which brings us on to the future. We're speaking on Sunday night, of course. Monday, the Contract Recognition Board is meeting to discuss the validity of Oscar Piastri's contracts, one with Alpine, one with McLaren. If it decides in McLaren's favour, what do you think of that Norris-Piastri lineup for 2023?
We all say, okay, he won the Formula 3 in the first season, Formula 2 in the first season. I don't know who was the last one who did it so quickly. So on the paper, he's a future superstar. And if he proves that on the track, it will be incredible, this battle with Norris. On the other hand, there's a lot of pressure now on Piastri. Now he doesn't have time anymore. A time to, let's say, start easily into Formula 1. He has to perform from day one.
Yeah, he's got nowhere to hide, has he?
Yeah.
Nowhere to hide.
Exactly.
And how good is Lando Norris? How difficult a task is it going to be for Piastri if he is in that second McLaren next year?
Lando Norris is for me somebody who started on a high level and improved year per year. He got better and better. I think he is on a very, very high level. I think he's ready to be a world champion from his performance. So it will be very, very difficult. But remember, there was a Lewis Hamilton coming and joining Fernando Alonso. And what happened?
This is undoubtedly a risk for McLaren, isn't it?
It is.
But he could turn out to be the next Lewis Hamilton. And I guess that is what they're banking on.
Obviously, because, I mean, they could have carried on with Daniel Ricciardo another year, and the chances that Daniel comes back to the old form were very, very slim. So they have to take the risk, Otherwise, there's nobody else on the market who could replace, from the experienced drivers, who could replace Ricciardo and giving them a better performance. So I think it's worth to take the risk.
Right, guys, I'm going to play devil's advocate now with Piastri and say, why do you think Piastri wanted to go to McLaren in that performance-wise the team is very similar to Alpine? If he'd gone to Alpine, he would have had Esteban Ocon alongside him. Difficult to say how that would have panned out, but you could argue quite strongly, I think, that maybe Piastri could have stacked up quite well against him. Less pressure, perhaps. Why do you think Piastri's gone McLaren, not Alpine?
Well, we don't know, is it really his wish or is it the wish of his manager? Maybe the manager sees better chances at McLaren long term than at Alpine. That's the first thing, and the second thing, maybe McLaren pays him better.
What's your assessment, Alpine or McLaren for Piastri?
I think the decision was made the moment Alonso will stay with Alpine, so there was no chance for drive for them. So it's either you go and drive for Williams for 1 year, or you can drive a McLaren. So you take the McLaren, and then this happened with the move of Alonso. So I think it decided before Alonso left.
That's very interesting, isn't it? And he's going to be up against Norris in his 5th year in the team. You know, when we compare Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso at McLaren, that was Alonso's first year in the team.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Whereas Piastri's going into a team where Norris has been there. It'll be his 5th season. He's got his feet well and truly under the table.
Yeah, I think for Piastri it will be a very tough first season. And as I said, people will ask for performance right from the first moment with the history behind it. Because if somebody has the balls to say, okay, I have a contract, or I had a contract with Alpine, which is not a bad team, but I go to McLaren and I say publicly, I'm not driving for this Alpine. Everybody thought he has a contract. Well, these people must perform.
Well, this is going to drag on nicely into Zandvoort next weekend, because it takes, I think, up to 3 days for the CRB to make their decision, which leads us to Thursday, which happens to be the interview day there. So we can all talk about it again next weekend in Holland. If Piastri goes to McLaren, what does Alpine do next with their lineup for 23?
Well, there's not much left, to be honest. They might take Gasly, and according to Helmut Marko, if Gasly gets a proper offer, they probably would let him go.
Do you think Ocon and Gasly would work well together?
No. Two French together, no, it cannot work. I think they have already a history. They've been racing against each other. No, it will not work well. But Alpine should not matter. You know, for them it should not matter if they like each other or not. We had Prost Senna as well in the same team. For me, after what happened, I think Alpine could take Jack Doohan or somebody, you know, like an upcoming star. Maybe we have a surprise.
Do you think Jack Doohan could step into the Alpine in 2023?
I just watch him in Formula 2 and I think he improved a lot, so he is on a good way.
Undoubtedly. I mean, he won the feature race in Formula 2 here at Spa this weekend. He's on a very sharp upward trajectory, but again, it would be a risk, wouldn't it? McLaren are taking a risk on Piastri. Will Alpine take a risk on Jack Doohan? As I'm talking, Max Verstappen, our race winner, is walking past, surrounded by lots of fans, lots of photographers. He is so relaxed, damn it, isn't he?
Yeah, obviously he has every reason to be relaxed in his situation, has the best car, and the second championship is just in front of him.
He's got one hand on it, maybe 1.5 hands on it now, hasn't he?
Yeah.
On that championship trophy. Last news story, guys, and I'm going to start with you, Mark. Audi. Big announcement on Friday. They're coming in as a power unit supplier. We all think they're going to go with Sauber as well. The announcement's going to come later in the year. As our Swiss correspondent here on F1 Nation, Mark, what's your read on the whole thing?
Yeah, it's the news we were expecting, but it's nice to hear. And it's fantastic to see that now suddenly we will have 3 manufacturers from Germany, because there is a fight between Audi and Porsche. It was already in Le Mans. I mean, the 2 from the Volkswagen group fighting each other is a bit strange. Was strange in Le Mans, now they come in Formula 1 and do the same again. So I think this will be very interesting, and I hope it will keep up the interest in Germany. We have no more German drivers. I mean, Mick has a Swiss passport. No? Mick is a Swiss. Did you know that?
Is that what? As our in-house German, Michael, do you agree with this Mick Schumacher having a Swiss passport?
Well, I think in Germany he's seen as a German, yeah, but what does that mean? You know, Jochen Rindt was seen as a German, although he was Austrian, but he was born in Germany, so he's more German for sure than Nico Rosberg.
Yeah, okay. Now, do we think Audi have the expertise to come in here in 26 and get the job done?
You know what I like? They stop everything else and concentrate on Formula 1, and this is what you have to do. Formula 1 is a big step, and they have the experience with hybrid cars from Le Mans, but still, I mean, they want to concentrate on Formula One, and I think this is a good approach, so I believe they will do well.
My question to you, Michael, is are they going to be making it 10% harder for themselves locating in Switzerland? I mean, look at Mercedes. It's not a coincidence that they went with a British team, and HPP is based in England as well.
Yeah, but you know, these German companies have kind of arrogance, kind of an arrogance. They say we can do it in Germany. We did it in Le Mans. We can do it also in Formula One. And you know, don't underestimate this this project they had in Le Mans. It was for example, from the software, because it was a hybrid drivetrain as well. In terms of software, it was much more sophisticated than this one, because they didn't have any rules. There was no MCU from the FI regulating the most things. It was an open software, so they could do things you are not even allowed in Formula One. So don't underestimate. I think there's a lot of expertise there, both on the combustion side and on the electric side.
I didn't realise until the announcement on Friday that Marcus Duesman, the CEO of Audi, the big chief, actually is a massive Formula One fan, and he worked with BMW when they were at Sauber back in the early noughties.
Yeah, he's a petrol head.
And are they the sort of company that will stick with it until they win?
I think so, yes, because they have proved it in other championships as well, whether it was Rally, Formula E, I think they won, then obviously in Le Mans they won.
Do you think there'll be a German driver driving an Audi Formula One car, Mark?
They have to start the project supporting young drivers, you know, academy for young drivers like Ferrari does, like Alpine does. That's the way to do it. They have to start from the bottom, and now, because all the formulas for young drivers are too expensive, they have to start quite from the bottom. They have to start in karting, supporting driver, like Richard Mill for Ferrari. They pick up karting drivers and support them. And I think if they do a program like this, they will bring up a lot of German drivers, but it will take a while.
Well, from one driver to another, I caught up with Alan McNish just after the announcement on Friday. Alan, of course, 3-time Le Mans winner, but twice with Audi. There's not much he doesn't know about what's going on.
Quite often I've heard the rumours of Audi's entry to Formula One, and there were a few times I think it got very close, but ultimately it didn't quite happen. But I think now is the right time to enter, because you've got the new regulations coming up, which are quite a change. There's a big increase in the electrification, which fits very well into the strategy with the road car division, which is a very important thing for us, because at the end of the day that it's an engineering-led company in principle, and so therefore that association is important. The whole sustainability aspect to it with the fuels as well has got another link, but there's one other factor. I think actually Formula One now, and in the last couple of years, has got a clear direction. It's got a position, it's got emotion, it's got passion about it as well. And ultimately it's on, I would say, a positive trajectory. And so when you put all of those factors together, then I think the set of regulations, the cost control regulations, and also just, I would say, the feel-good factor that it's got right now is a perfect time to enter in 2026.
So the announcement at Spa this weekend is as a power unit supplier in 26. Do you think they'll want their own team?
Well, there's many ways to look at this, and that's something that you'll have to wait and see a wee bit, Tom, on. But clearly, you know, the power unit is the area where the regulations have came out at the moment, and that's exactly what we've 100% committed to. And the next part of it, then we'll see before 2026, won't we?
Look, Alan, tell us a bit more about Audi's racing division, the DNA for racing that exists inside Audi. I mean, first of all, how central is racing to Audi?
Well, as I said, Audi historically is a technically led company, and in that respect it's got very, very close links from a motorsport perspective to the technical department of it. Ollie Hoffman, who was here, who was part of the proceedings this weekend, is the Chief Technical Officer, and I've seen him at so many racing circuits, and he's got a drive and a passion behind it. Marcus Duesman, the CEO, has been involved in this Formula One paddock before, and so therefore they've got, I would say, it running through their veins, and that's always a very positive thing. But even in Audi history, they have, I would have said, always been trying to break new ground. I know from my experience as a driver with them, but through the Le Mans program, we were always trying to find new innovative solutions, and that was something that could only be found in motorsport. And so the DNA was very, very linked between the two of them, and this is just the next extension step. I wouldn't say it's a step, it's an extension of that particular part of it, because it's always been one of the ones that brings an emotion, a passion, but it brings a technical requirement. And ultimately, they like to find solutions.
Right, the brand has had so much success in motorsport, in rallying, in Le Mans, 13 Le Mans wins, 2 of them with you, of course. Then there's all sorts of other stuff with, most recently, Formula E. How much of a step up is Formula One going to be for them?
Well, I think you've got 2 things. Formula One is definitely the pinnacle in so many different ways. You look at it from a championship point of view, it's a world championship, but it's 23, probably 24, 25 races in the future. That's obviously a step up. When you look at it from the number of personnel, when you look at it from the investment, the focus, the detail, and also the competition in the paddock that is now and will be in the future. I think from the capability perspective, then actually they've got very good people, very good experience, very, very good facilities in Neuburg. And I would say a lot of people, that's hidden. And it's not a secret to us, but it's maybe a secret to the world of motorsport and certainly the world of Formula One. And so, yes, for sure, there's areas that they need to work on and develop. But I think from my perspective, all the pieces and people are there to deliver. But you also have to respect the competition as well, because they've been doing this a long, long time, and I think every time you go to a new category, it's like a reset a little bit. All the successes you were talked about, that's history, and it's a big part of the history, and history is part of your future. But it's a reset when you go out and you have to prove it once again.
All right. So when can we expect them to be competitive?
That's a big question, isn't it? I think coming in with a new set of regulations, which predominantly from a power unit supply set the benchmark at 0 again, allows you a little bit of latitude there. However, saying that, ultimately we come in wanting to be competitive straight away with the knowledge that sometimes is possible, sometimes not possible. I'm not going to jump on that particular one right now, Tom, but it's quite clear that we come in to deliver and to do the job. There's no question, but it is also very clear that we know exactly the challenge that's ahead of us, and it's a big, big challenge. But it's one that we've decided is the right challenge for Audi at the moment.
And how important are drivers to Audi? Will they have an influence over a lineup in a particular team?
Drivers are important in racing, and as an ex-driver, I would say that they're one of the most important parts.
Yeah,
of
definitely.
It. Audi's it's a global company. At the end of the day, it sells cars globally, it produces technology globally, its factories globally, and so in that respect, certainly its base and heart is in Ingolstadt and in Neckarsulm. However, it's not just a German company.
Alan, many thanks. Great to hear from Alan there. I think he's going to be involved at some level, isn't he, Michael?
Yeah, I think so. For sure, they take everybody they can take on board who has knowledge and understanding of motor racing and Formula One in particular.
All right, well, guys, thank you very much for your time. It's been great to go through this Belgian Grand Prix weekend. We haven't got much time until the next one. What happens between now and Zandvoort for you guys?
Well, I go back to Germany and will drive up to Zandvoort on Wednesday.
I go back to Switzerland and for 3 days, and then also Zandvoort, yeah.
Final one from me. Can we get your predictions for Zandvoort? Are we going to see the level of dominance there that we've seen here at Spa?
No, I think it will be closer between Ferrari and Red Bull, but at the moment, Red Bull is on a run. I think they will win that as well.
I mean, the track should be for Ferrari. We expected that in Hungary, but I hope they can show it in Zandvoort, and we need this to keep the championship a little bit longer open.
Little bit longer anyway. And I'm hoping for Mercedes. They were so strong in Hungary, weren't they? Let's hope that what we've seen from them this weekend is just a little blip, and they'll be back at it next weekend. Guys, thank you very much for your time. We'll, of course, be back with F1 Nation from the Zandvoort paddock coming out next Monday. But for now, thank you very much for listening. F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.